the cold start, waking up to reality if your brain's still stuck on Disney ballrooms. Warm light and a sassy pet bird reset it now. You wake before dawn in a stone room where the air hurts, not the cute fall sweater weather kind of cold. This is bone deep, iron bar, cold with teeth. You see your breath before you see the room. The fire in the hearth collapsed into dull orange smile lines. Sometime after midnight, your bed, it whispers when you move. That sound isn't luxury. Linen, it's straw, real straw, home to real mice, your inadvertent roommates. They skitter at your shift, then vanish into the thatch like guilty secrets. The smell rides the air like a layered song. Wet stone, old smoke, human because bathing is rare, especially in Winterrand, the sharp, sour note of the chamber pot. In the corner, there's no bathroom. There's a pot and a window slit where wind slices in sideways like a reprimand. A gust lifts the edge of the heavy curtain, and you feel the night's last cold stroke your ankles. From a pallet at the end of your bed, someone stirs. "Good morning, my lady," says Alice. She's been awake longer than you. She usually is. She's the reason your world doesn't tumble into chaos, your attendant, tutor, guardrail, confessor, and the person who turns stubborn mornings into functional days. She kneels at the hearth, pokes, blows, coaxes. Charcoal breathes, flame answers. A soft rectangle of orange begins to map itself across the floorboards. You reach toward it like a plant, no 5 more minutes. Bells govern life. Bells call. Prayer. Bells discipline, hunger. Bells tell you what hour belongs to God and what hour belongs to the kitchen. And those hours never consult your feelings. Alice helps you dress. First the linen shift, blessedly clean of all your clothes. It sees water most often. Over that, a close-fitting kirtle that laces long and tight. Then an overdress whose sleeves are so extravagant that your arms become banners. Wealth is meant to be seen from across the hall. Comfort is not the point. The leather slippers are thin, the soles a suggestion. You'll feel stoned through them. That's normal. Your hair is a marvel by candlelight, so it must be hidden. Not in a tall fairy tale cone, wrong century, wrong region, but under a linen veil and wimple that frame your face and erase your neck. In public, hair is temptation. In private, it's practicality. Alice braids and pins with speed born of routine. She catches your glance in the burnished mirror dim metal circle. Not glass and sees the way your eyes are already calculating the day's tolerances. Prayers. She reminds you gently. The corridor outside is part night, part draft. Torches, spit, rushlights smolder. Servants carry wood, water, linens, and trays. The castle is a village that learned to walk hallways. You pass a guard whose breath steams in the gloom. He nods, you nod back. Power exists here, but so does the work required to feed it. The chapel holds the morning. Candles multiply on the altar, color shifted by cold into small suns. Your family stands where their places teach them to stand. Father in front king, or earl. The word varies, but the control does not. Brothers near him, mother at his side, if she survived your last sibling. You and your sisters are behind the men. Behind is the position for women in everything but blame. Latin starts. You answer. It like a dance you learned as a child. Understanding is optional, display is not. A princess is a diagram others read to find God and order. You keep your body still on stone that feels like a winter's worth of storms. You say the right words at the right syllables. You wish you could trade your thin shoes for a hay bale. By the time the priest dismisses you, your stomach is its own bell. Breakfast is bread dense, honest, more work than a modern slice and ale, because water can betray you. Maybe a curling piece of cheese. Maybe an egg, if the hens had a good attitude. The hall hums with an entire household eating at once. Soldiers, stewards, scribes, visiting nobles, and the family at the high table, elevated to be seen. Privacy is a story people tell each other in half a millennium. Here, your life is a stage. Alice materializes with watered wine. She pours, then leans so quietly that only the space behind your ear hears it. Your father requests your presence after the meal, my lady. Bread becomes chalk. The thing about being a royal daughter isn't whether politics will put a hand on your shoulder, it's when you swallow. You keep your gaze neutral because eyes become rumors, and rumors become leverage in other people's throats. When the benches skate back and the hall exhales meal into motion, you follow corridors that know your footsteps. The farther you go, the warmer the air gets. Your father's solar is lit like truth sunlight where there's window, wavelet flame where there isn't. Seals gape on wax like careful wounds. Parchment ribs the table. A map lies open. Rivers run like veins. The King of France, your father says before you're fully across the threshold, proposes a match. He faces you as a ruler, not as anyone's soft memory. His second son, Felipe. He lists the terms like grocery and gospel, ports, rights, lands, pledges, dates, Michaelmas for the announcements, spring for the wedding, after U-turn. 14. Conveniently, the church set the minimum. Inconveniently, the church will not be the one in your bed. There are words you could say. There are tears you could have if tears worked here. They don't. Tears are currency that never buys. So you choose the sentence that keeps the floor from vanishing. Yes, father. Outside his window, 2 squires are treating the yard like it's a game invented for their joy. They test wooden swords, miss and grin, miss and laugh, connect, and laugh harder. No one smacks their hands for shouting. No one tells them their hair is the devil's tripwire. They will be measured soon enough, but today their bodies are theirs and the cold is just a thing to run through. Back in your chamber, Alice reads your face like a ledger. France, she says. You nod, second son. Another nod. Then you. We'll need more French, she decides, in a tone that finds the line between comfort and plan. And gloves, if you mean to live like a French lady and still keep your hands. Daylight finally threads your narrow window. Your ladies, and Isabel and 2 more whose futures are braided to yours by opportunity and proximity, move around you in small, purposeful hurricanes. Oil warms, ink sands. A harp gets tuned to the temperature of the room. You sit at your frame. By habit, your needle finds its mark. By choice, your stitches go smaller. The piece is the Annunciation, and you do not miss the irony that you are stitching consent into linen minutes after having none. Gabriel's hand extends. Mary's head inclines. Somewhere a world pivots. Bells bite the morning again. Duty's teeth are clean and precise. If you're waiting for glamour, that's a summer festival illusion. The day-to-day for a princess is repetition beneath a crown, discomfort beneath a cloak, and performance beneath a god who watches even when you blink. You breathe, you stitch. You hold the thread inside your fingers so it warms and behaves. If you're going to be a symbol, you can at least insist on clean edges. Smaller, Alice murmurs approvingly over your shoulder. French small, you smile without showing teeth. French small, then, for now, for everything. Because in this century, survival is the luxury. And you intend to be very, very luxurious. Asterisk hours of God, hours of men. A day that owns you medieval time doesn't slip, it snaps. Bells map the day into exact pieces matins, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers. Complanand the castle folds itself into those creases. Think of it like this. If your favorite playlist ran the whole kingdom, every track would be titled Obligation. You won't love every song. You will dance to each. French first. Lady Catherine arrives with a face that looks permanently disappointed in vowels. She sets her book on the table like a gavel. Bonjour, mademoiselle, you answer. Your nasals are better than last winter's, worse than Paris expects. She touches a thin wooden paddle to your knuckles without theatrics. The tap isn't fury, it's feedback. Pain is a teacher here. You reshuffle your tongue, aim for the correct echo in your sinuses, and repeat again, again. Improvement is incremental and costs skin. Paris doesn't forgive. Lady Catherine says in a voice that suggests she knows from experience. It rewards precision again. Your mouth is sore by the time she dismisses you. The paddled heat in your hands will fade. The knowledge won't. And that, you admit privately, is a fair trade. Asterisk. Household, next. Brother Thomas may be the patron saint of inklines. He brings wax, tablets, and Roman numerals that insist they can count just fine without the new Arabic ease. The exercise is exhausting. Fish for fast days, candles for corridors. Bushels of wheat into loaves, into mouths, into the stubborn math of winter stores. You convert measures with your jaw clenched and your mind on fire. Stewardship has no patience for romance. If you miscalculate, your hall goes hungry and your shame sits visible on every empty trencher. A well-run household is a hymn. Brother Thomas says, his stylus biting neat grooves. Godly order made visible. He doesn't mean it as kindness, but you take it as such. If your life must be sung, you may as well choose the key. Needlework. The frame waits like a door you built yesterday. Your current piece still, the Annunciation anchors, you in the day's surge. Silk thread slips. Gold thread phrase. Your fingers learn the small physics of pressure and angle. Around you, the room is a murmuring hive. Margaret sorts dyed silks deeper the color, deeper the cost. Isabel hums, a psalm you can't place. Alice inspects your tension and nods almost imperceptibly. French ladies stitch like they hold secrets. Alice says, each one small and exact. You make your stitches smaller. Secrets demand it. Music. Sister Agnes arrives with a portable harp and a patience forged in a convent where girls learned to turn noise into prayer. Your hands are stiff, from needles and paddles and tablets, but the strings forgive you. You don't play love songs wrong audience, wrong lessons. You play steady devotional pieces that mark you as pious and useful in a hall where entertainment is proof of polish. Your timing wobbles. Sister Agnes catches your eye and clicks her tongue once. You find the beat and ride it, a princess's, an instrument others play. Today, you play yourself back. By now, the bell for sext midday prayer is near. You change gowns again. The day expects formal for the noon meal because dignitaries sometimes arrive unannounced, and your father prefers to be worshipped via optics. The hall is a theatre packed with every station required to run a realm. Men-at-arms with shoulders like doors. Clerks who know too much. Guests whose names you learn in the moment they ask for favors. Servants who see everything and say nothing. Your place is at the high table where plates are wider and the view is higher. You eat less because appetite is a rumor that can be weaponized. Your father raises a cup and speaks in a tone calibrated for long rooms. We welcome friends and holy men, which translated means I show you my hospitality so I can charge. Your gratitude interests later. A bishop nods, his ring catching light, his eyes wandering with a lazy hunger toward the line of serving girls. The truth about vows is that men make them for other people to respect. Alice leans to refill your cup and whispers, Lord Everard is watching, please him with your French. You find Lord Everard in the crowd of male and velveter thick man. With a thin smile and you ask him a simple question in French about the road from his holding to the abbey. His surprise is obvious. His answer is slow, deliberate, encouraging. Across the table, your father's mouth barely curves. That's the currency you just earned. Credibility. Small denomination. The meal rolls course by course pottages, roast fowls, a tart so heavily spiced you can taste the cost. Spices are a flag you wave to say, we have reach. You pick through. Bones carefully, your hands a grammar everyone reads. Gluttony is a sin, yes, but so is carelessness when it draws blood in a room full of witnesses. After the meal, your father's glance snaps you to your feet. You follow him to the solar again, smooth as ink. A messenger from France arrived last night. The seal on the parchment is crushed and red. The French propose to move quickly, he says. Michaelmas, then wedding by proxy here, then you. Depart for the Channel the moment the weather allows. He doesn't look up from the parchment. His voice contains seasons and horses and ships. Yes, father, you say, and the sentence feels like a key fitting every lock you'll ever know. He does not ask what you want. He asks what you require to prepare. More French, you answer, and a French lady in waiting, if one can be sent early. He glances up, surprised enough that you see it. Practical, he says. We'll arrange it. This, right here, is a margin. It's narrow, but it exists. Within it, you can ask for infrastructure. You can shape the tools you'll be handed. To survive the place that will judge how you hold a spoon. The afternoon discipline. Dancing Master Henry is narrow as a rapier and twice as sharp. The bass donks, he announces, as if naming a god. Your spine obeys. Your chin rises. The steps are small, controlled, precise. The goal is not to move. It is to seem to float. He claps when you misplace a foot. Not to shame you, but to mark the instant you left the pattern. You repeat. You learn. The grammar of being seen. Square shoulders read power. Drifting gaze reads foolish. Open mouth reads ignorance. Nothing in court is accidental. Everything is text. The stillroom respite. Lady Marjorie's world smells like sanity, lavender, beeswax, rosemary, and honey. Shelves cradle bottles and jars, the accumulated wisdom of women who kept households alive across 1,000 winters. Hands, she says, and you sit, obedient and grateful. She rubs salve into the inflamed rose across your knuckles. At your split cuticle, nods at the callus forming where your pen sits. Gloves, child. She presses a small pot into your palm. Rose salve. Pack it when you go. It's a tiny kindness, but it lands like a friend's hand on your back in a crowd. Evening descends by degrees you can feel in your bones. Vespers pulls you back to the chapel, where candlelight remakes faces into masks of gold and shadow. Father. Ambrose drones the familiar words, and you let them carry you. The day has been a blade. Prayer is the cloth that wraps it. Afterward, Alice guides you to the kitchen at the steward's request. Saltfish shortages ahead of a fast day. 12. Extra mouths from a bishop's retinue, the kind of logistics that keep castles from embarrassment. You answer without fanfare. Use next week's herring. Send to the abbey for more tomorrow. Stretch with pottage and barley bread. Agnes, the head cook, nods approval. You just solved a problem, a small one, but yours. Household competence is not romance. It is control you can touch. Night, you change into a softer gown and watch the hall remake itself. Torches flare. Music threads the rafters. A troupe of acrobats survives gravity for the length of a song. Your father toasts alliances. Your mother's eyes measure everything and change nothing on her face. You perform a brief harp, peaceful. Steady now and receive a wave of appreciative noise like a warm shawl. When you sit, your mother lets her hand brush the back of yours. It is a thunderclap of intimacy in a climate that hates storms. In bed, Margaret reads until your eyelids sink. She chooses tales unsuitable for a girl about to be sold to a on roads lit by moons, ladies who choose, forests that speak, you drift on them anyway. Your last waking thought is a treason in miniature. What if princess could mean something you make, not just something you were made into? Tomorrow's belle doesn't care, but you do. And that difference, held quietly, is where futures start. Asterisk lessons in obedience, mother, church, and the padalif, your world is a fortress. Its walls are made of 3 materials: family, faith, and fashion. Today, all 3 take their turns, hammering you into the shape they require. The queen, your mother, summons you, her chambers breathe wealth. Tapestries thick enough to stop a draft. A fire that burns more like a sculpture than a necessity. Cushions upholstered in fabric that cost somebody a season of labor to weave. Ladies hover like well-trained birds. They find thread, fetch water, finish thoughts. She doesn't waste speech. Sit, daughter, not your name. The word that clarifies which role she's addressing. She points you to a seat beside a frame where yards of silk ground host a story. In progress, your wedding tapestry. England's lion and France's lilies knot themselves together in gold you can't stop seeing. We sew what we must endure, she says, eyes on her needle, so that it lies smooth. You take a corner of border, and she watches your hands. Like a customs officer. You feel her look move from your technique to your posture to the choices you're about to lose. You will be judged on these, she says, not unkindly. On what shows and what doesn't. Learn to love small work. Does it hurt? You ask before you can uncage the word. You mean the wedding night. You mean a version of love that is body first, contract second. Her gaze doesn't lift. Yes, she says, and then it passes. This is almost tenderness. It is also instruction. Pain is part of your curriculum, not a glitch. More importantly, remember this. She removes a small wrapped bundle from a pouch at her belt and places it in your palm. Inside a ring, a gold circle with a tired ruby, worn soft by other women's lives. From my mother, to me, to you. Wear it beneath your gloves. Remember where you came from when they tell you who you are. The ring's warmth sits in your fist like a vow you can make to yourself. A modern therapist would call it an anchor. Here, it is a contraband truth. You kneel beside her frame and stitch in silence. The room clicks with needles, breathes with women's work tastes faintly of beeswax and power. You study her profile, the set of her mouth, the carved concentration end. You see for the first time the outline of a Spanish girl who crossed water and handed her body to a nation. You wonder if anybody asked her what she wanted. You suspect not. Lady Catherine finds you next with French that today tastes like iron. She makes you rehearse the precise formulae of address for an entire royal court you haven't met, to the king, to the queen if she's present, to princes, to dukes, to lords whose rank outpaces their sense. She drills your verbs until they line up like soldiers. Accent is forgivable, she says. Errors in honorifics are not. Your mouth is a battlefield by the time Father Ambrose arrives. He doesn't bring war, he brings gravity. Ephesians, he says, opening his book with the reverence of a man who knows paper is expensive. Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. His voice is rope, the words pull you. He lucidly outlines the hierarchy, Christ over church, husband over wife, parent over child, ruler over subject. He speaks, to his credit, about kindness and patience and the duty of a husband to love. But the air around the words vibrates with one direction of obedience. You don't argue, not here. Not with the old man whose hands shake when he blesses the bread, who baptized your youngest brother with hands that smell like tallow and winter. You say the responses. You let the lesson lay its casing over your bones. Later, in the stillroom, where the air belongs to women, you will peel some of it off, dancing again. Master Henry now insists your eyes look level, not down. A French princess does not occupy air. She designs it, he says, adjusting your shoulders with 2 fingers and a smirk. Do not waver. Your ankles ache from the constant slip of thin soles on polished floor. Your calves complain. Your spine threatens mutiny. You do not give it permission. In the afternoon, Lady Isabel arrives, the one the French sent ahead. She is an education, dressed as a woman. Her gown fits different at the sleeves, cleaner at the seams, the fabric richer but somehow less shouty than English finery. Her veil is sheer. Her eyes see everything. Princess, she says in French that sounds like a room with better windows. We'll begin with posture and the language of your hands. Your hands, she smiles. Yes, your hands speak. They must say, I know my place, and from my place, I can command attention. She walks you through a new set of expectations. How to sit hips forward, shoulders open, chest lifted, chin level, eyes alive. How to rise, fluid, not abrupt. How to accept a gift, hands together, wrists aligned, a bow of the head that suggests gratitude without surrender. Everything is message, she says. Nothing is accident. You must learn to write sentences with your body. Will they like me, you ask, and hate that the question got out. Some will, she says, ignoring your embarrassment. Some never will. Many will be waiting to decide. Give them reasons to decide in your favor, and more importantly, make friends with people whose reasons matter. Who are those, you ask? She smiles slightly. We'll make a list. You practice walking. You practice sitting. You practice the art of noticing without staring. Lady Isabel corrects you less than Lady Catherine, but her corrections land like seeds you will grow into habit. Stitches, she says, echoing something Alice said days ago when your life first tilted toward the channel. You suppress a smile. The women in your orbit are conspiring to keep you alive. Evening brings you back to the chapel, where candlelight burns warmer than it did 2 days ago. Not because the room changed, because you did. Your mother's ring sits, hidden, at the base of your finger beneath your glove. You press your thumb against it once, the way a person with a secret might check it's still safe. The words Father Ambrose asks you to say have been said for centuries in rooms like this by girls like you. You say them, too. You mean some of them. The rest you store in a drawer called survival. When you finally sink into bed, your hands throb where the paddle found them. Your back sings from the bastonks. Your brain is a lit corridor of verbs and curtsies. You curl toward the heat, and Margaret opens the familiar book of tales. Tonight she chooses a story about a woman who outwits 3 men by listening longer than they do. You fall asleep on the sentence where a door opens because she knows which hinge to press in the morning. The bell will ring again, but tonight, for 10 breaths, you sleep like someone who might someday open a door on purpose. Asterisk. The public table, where politics eats the noon meal, looks like a feast and feels like court. In a medieval castle, the Great Hall is an airport terminal, a church nave, a town square, and a political arena pressed into one stone box. Today, it's an arena. Word traveled fast. The French proposal moved from rumor to route map. Nobles who swore they were in the area anyway appear in colors as loud as peacocks. You wear blue trimmed with mine-of-ore expensive. Deliberate, a declaration that your father's purse can sing as well as roar. The rushes on the floor are new, layered with herbs that crush to clean scent underfoot. Bread racks lean against walls. Dogs hover hopefully near the kitchen door. A boy in a livery 2 sizes too large stares at your circlet like it's the moon. At the high table, you are visible by design. The hall reads you the way a jury reads a defendant. Your job is to give them no reason to think you're guilty of anything but excellence. The bread trenchers arrive, thick slices cut yesterday, dried enough to be plate, and later, pottage thickener for the poor. Then the first course, a leek broth, smooth as patience, carried in shared bowls. You share with the bishop's secretary, a man with ink for blood and nerves for hands. He worries he'll clink spoons with you. You put him at ease with a practiced sentence. I've heard you copied the Psalter from the Abbey at St. Mary's. Your hand is famous. He blushes. He tells you about pigments. He forgets you are terrifying. Your father rises for a toast and turns the room with his words. We give thanks to God for the friends he sends and the roads he opens. Which means, I see the French, and I intend to use this. The bishop responds equally. God smiles on wisdom, which means, remember us when ports become taxes, plates. Parade, fish with saffron sauce, you taste the cost. Capon stuffed with dried fruit, you taste the trade routes. Veal in a pepper-snap gravy, you feel the distant heat. Every spice is a flex, proof that your household reaches past your county, past your island, into ships and overland caravans and men whose names are spoken in Arabic long before they're spoken in English. A measuring mind could calculate your father's credit by the cinnamon alone. Alice drifts behind you with the choreography of someone who practices invisibility professionally. Lord Bertram, she whispers, from France. You follow her glance. He's down the table with your father salt in his beard, velvet at his cuffs, a man who handles parchment and steel with equal familiarity. You don't meet his eye. It would be premature, and you are not a girl who reads pages before permission around you. Conversations ride currents, estate complaints, garrison gossip, whispered laughter that stops when the bishop's gaze glances that direction. A young knight from your father's household stares at a serving girl with the intent of someone who, given 10 minutes, will do something stupid. You mark it and let it pass. Not your jurisdiction. Not yet your mother corrects your grip on the knife with a pressure of 2 fingers. Silent note. Hold the blade like knowledge, not like vengeance. You adjust. Across the room, a minstrel starts a tune, you know. You don't look, you don't flinch. You practice being a room that others enter but do not rattle. After the meal, the hall thins like fog lifting. Your father's steward intercepts you as you rise, murmuring a problem about stores and Fridays and the bishop's unexpectedly large retinue. You answer without slowing, north storeroom herring, then a runner to the abbey, pottage with barley to stretch. He bows, grateful and relieved. This small competence writes a line under your name in the book of people who make things work. The solo waits again. Today, the room hums at a different pitch, higher, tighter, expectant. The French delegation stands, women in softer jewel tones, and men in blues like rivers. Your father greets Lord Bertram with a warmth that does not wet the floor. Lady Isabel moves to your side as if she were always there. Introductions are a ceremony of precision. You speak French with care, your mouth carefully remembering where pain taught it to place sounds. Lord Bertram's eyebrows lift a fraction at your accents, surprised, pleased, recalculating, Benvenware and Angleterre. You say to a countess, whose sleeves could carry a child, Votre voyage, na, pas, eat, trot de vessel, j'espère. I hope the journey wasn't too hard. The countess smiles like a cat in a patch of sunlight, points to you. You just banked them. Your father and Lord Bertram talk terms with the politeness of fencers who mean to draw blood later. Dowry, lands north. Border, territories, trade concessions at French ports, pledges, dates, witnesses, seals. Margins are drawn. Scribes write. Wax melts. Nothing about this is romantic. Everything about it is engraved. Lady Isabel's shoulder touches yours briefly. 3 English ladies may accompany you permanently, she whispers. Eyes on the table where the contract grows its signature lines. Choose wisely. You already know, Alice, because she is spine and heart in equal measure. Margaret, because she keeps your head soft where it should be and sharp where it must be. Lady Alina, because she can make a room say yes to you twice without noticing they did. You state the names. Your father nods once, already moving to the next square on the board. Proxy marriage. Lord Bertram says, 3 weeks hence. Then to your father, weather permitting, departure immediately after, 3 weeks. You thought you had months of slow becoming. You were wrong. The calendar has been turned for you. They talk route, Dover to Calais, then onward to Paris, with stops at noble houses whose hospitality will double as surveillance. They discuss retinue, guards, chaplain, physician, cooks, your ladies, their trunks, trunks. They mention horses as if horses could be charmed into calm seas. You say little, that is the point. You are the flame in the lamp. Others carry you to the wind after. In the garden, Lady Isabel walks with you. The sun has the color of watered gold. The herb sage, thyme, rubler green above dark earth. She waits until your shoulders lower an inch. You may ask questions. Will he be kind, you ask, startled by your own voice. You mean the boy your body will answer to. Prince Philippe, she considers. He is more book than sword. Thoughtful, not cruel. Her glance flickers. Kindness is remarked upon because it is rare among men trained to inherit. Will I get to meet him before the you stop? Your mouth refuses to finish the word. Unlikely, she says. Proxies court. Bodies confirm. You walk between cold mint and bold rosemary and learn to inhale slowly. The garden steams a little where sun warms the soil. Bees stage tiny wars over flowers. Your hands want the stillroom, the small gentleness of patient work. Your life wants the channel. Watch before you speak, Lady Isabel says softly. Count before you trust. Make friends with women who have weathered 10 winters at court, and give France a child quickly. Nothing will guard you more efficiently. It is the most practical, brutal, useful advice you have ever been given. You want to laugh and cry at once. Instead, you add midwives to a list in your head and say, I'll need books. She smiles. That, princess, can be arranged. You head back inside. The ring on your finger sits under the glove, warm because your hand is. It takes only a week to teach your body how to carry a secret without telling on itself. 3 weeks. Until your proxy wedding. A month until the sea. The calendar is a drum. You hear it in your bones. Asterisk, the proxy wedding. Gold, Latin, and an empty groom's chair. The morning of your proxy wedding opens like theatre curtains. Slow, measured, purposeful. Bath water steams in a tub rare, expensive scented with rosemary and lavender. Alice scrubs your hair until it squeaks, then dries it by the hearth so your scalp doesn't catch a chill that could turn into the kind of cough that priests misdiagnose and apothecaries mistreat. Your gown is cream silk, stitched with seed. Pearls that catch light and pretend it's spring. Minerva trims the sleeves. The train requires 2 girls, trained in the art of walking backward while smiling. You eat a little bread. Your stomach waits for a verdict. The hall is transformed into a chapel's bigger cousin altar at the far end. Relics displayed, candles ranking themselves up to rafters. Guests glaze the room in jewels and expectation. At the front, a space where a groom should be. Instead, Lord Bertram stands solemn, aware he is a human clause in a contract more ancient than his line. Father Ambrose looks like a man who has been given a very sturdy rope and told to tie a ship. The ceremony is Latina mathematics of vows and witnesses, and you speak your parts with a voice that refuses to break. Your hand holds steady while a ring slides onto it from a man who is not the man you'll share a bed with, but who carries that man's authority for this 1 hour. You are married, legally, politically. Publicly our body's turn will come later, on a different shore. There's a moment where the noise in the hall seems to fold inward like dough being turned. It's the instant your life stops being hypothetical. You've been training for this. Now you begin. Feasting follows because politics likes to digest with proof of prosperity. There are subtleties, sugar sculptures light as lie-shaped like lilies and lions knitting together, as if sugar could teach nations to stick. People present gifts with elaborate phrases you mirror perfectly in French. A duke admires your poise. A countess remarks loudly on your shoulders. A lady with eyes that count beams at you like you've done her a personal favor by not tripping. Your father's pride is a controlled fire. Your mother kisses your forehead, a small, precise benediction. Lady Isabel watches you like a chess player who sees 3 moves deeper than you can. You are allowed a brief withdrawal to your chamber to be embroidered into evening. You catch sight of yourself in the metal mirror face under unfamiliar weight and, for a flicker of a second, you want to throw the circlet into the fire and run until lanes. Turn to hedges, turn to dark, turns to the sound your feet make when they know where they're going. You do not run. You pull your gloves on, feel the ring under them, and say to Alice, "Pack the rose salve where I can find it." That night, you sleep badly. Dreams turn corridors into mazes, seas into mouths. When dawn picks at the shutters, the courtyard, below is already a hive. Men check stirrup leathers. Trunks stack into little cities. Horses stamp and blow smoke from their heads. Your mother stands by the gate. Her face is an icon, emotion flattened into meaning. Your father's mouth is a line drawn with a ruler. Remember who you are, your mother says when you bend to kiss her hand. Does she mean your bloodline or the self that stares back at you when the room's empty? You decide you can make the sentence hold both. Your father kisses your hair, awkward because tenderness is not his working language, and steps aside to let you mount. Lady Isabel brings her horse alongside yours. Ready? No. Yes. The gates open. The world on the far side is the same world, but its edges feel sharper. You ride through, and 100 pairs of eyes scroll your name onto a list headed elsewhere. The procession snakes across the countryside like a portable city guards. Servants, wagons, your chaplain, your physician, a cook who can coax a stew from gloom. The roads are mud and rumour. Abbeys take you in at night because they are safer. Then manor houses, less political. The beds are pallets with straw like home, but colder, less forgiving. You share with your ladies and learn again how to fit your body into a small warmth and call that victory. On the second day, a storm talks the sky into anger. Wind crushes the road into ruts, and your shoulders ache from a posture that must look effortless. You think of Paris as a word, not a place, and find it easier to breathe. On the third day, you see the sea dot. It is not a story, it is not a painting. It is a living thing with 1,000 moods and one intention. The smell reaches you first, salt and rot and rope and tar and fish and then the sound, a low, endless hammer that has been building coasts since coasts were ideas. The water is grey-green. The sky is something worse. Ships bob like meaningless. Punctuation in a sentence the ocean wrote, that one, Lord Bertram says, pointing to a vessel that looks too small for something this large. Sainte Marie, strong and sure. Strong and sure do not look like that. But the captain moves like a man who has seen worse and lived. And men like that convince people for a living. You pray in the chapel at Dover because people do. Because your father taught you to. Because your mother taught you to hold your breath at the end and add one small secret sentence, and keep me from disappearing. Then you let sailors half carry you down steps that are not stairs so much as wet ideas, into a skiff that bobs with malevolent cheer, out to the ship that will pry you from your land like a tooth. They tell you the channel is narrow. They do not tell you it's an animal with moods. The crossing, a mouth of salt and a country of wind, the skiff slaps the side of Sainte Marie so hard your teeth click. Arms rough shore, smelling of tar and rope lift you, pass you from hand to hand like a reliquary. The deck under your slippers moves the way floors shouldn't. Your stomach protests. Your body protests. Your heart perches high in your throat and refuses to come down. The cabin set aside for you is barely a box with a bed shelf bolted to one wall and a chest that will give you bruises because the ship will knock you against it. It smells like last voyages and too much humanity. Alice ties your hair back with ruthless efficiency. Lady Isabel braces her stance like she's danced with wind before. Lie down when we clear the harbor, she advises. Breathe through your mouth. Think of lines, not circles. The harbor gives you a gentle lie of a start. Then the open water takes it back. The ship lifts and drops, as if remembering a joke it hates. You become an instrument played by someone who told you they wouldn't. Within an hour, you are violently, helplessly sick into a bucket you will thank for existing. Alice holds your hair. Lady Isabel holds your dignity by pretending this is normal, because it is. Even kings vomit. They just do it behind better curtains. Time fractures into incidents. A wave that catches the hull at a wrong angle. A rope that creaks like a complaint. A sailor swearing 3 prayers at once. Lady Isabel dabs vinegar on your temples. It smells like a clean house you don't live in. You think you might die. You think you might not. You aren't sure which frightens you more. A storm blows up, because of course it does. The captain shouts orders in a voice that cuts weather. Men move with practiced profanity. The ship leans into a posture you'd call impossible if you weren't on it. The world outside the cabin is noise and water and intent. Inside, it is you in a bucket and the sound of your pulse like a dropped drum. You pray the selfish prayers of people in small rooms, not me. Not now, not like this and then. You pray the generous ones, let my people arrive with me, and then you stop praying, because your body requires all your verbs. Night happens. You know, because the dark inside the cabin grows teeth. Someone wedges a lantern in a wall bracket, and the light swings in a pattern designed to make your stomach reconsider its allegiance again. You sleep in jagged pieces between waves, wearing more water than you drink. Dreaming is impossible. The ship will not let you forget where you are. When morning finally hands you a different grey, Lady Isabel opens the door to blast your sins back into your face with clean salt air. Land, she says, the syllable like bread. You crawl to the threshold because crawling is the only verb your legs remember. Outside, land is a smear that grows edges. Low, dark, then stone, then a fort that looks like it was built by men who understood the word attack in 3 languages. Calais, she says. France, you stand, you do not fall. Men cheer. Not for you, for physics. It is close enough. Disembarking is the reverse of embarking, with added legs that forgot solid. When your shoes meet dock, they argue. You tell them to shut up. A litter waits because someone remembered that women who are meant to charm a court should not arrive sea-green and staggering. You allow yourself to be carried because you have learned in the last 16 hours what you do and do not control. C. Hateau de la Halle sits over the harbour with the kind of confidence that comes from surviving too many winters and more sieges than it wants to brag about. Inside, your chambers are lit and aired and warmed. The tub is full. Alice says, "Thank God," and this time you think she might be right. The water kisses your skin like apology. Rosemary coils from the steam. You close your eyes and count to a number that means I have come back into myself. An audience waits, of course. Nobles who represent this region, a churchman with rings that could anchor boats, ladies who will inspect your skin and your French and your nerves, and then report all 3 to people who have never seen your face. You dress in blue like the last hour of daylight. You hide every sign of the ocean. You walk into their gaze with Lady Isabel 2 steps behind you because optics are a language, and she is fluent. Bonne way in France. Princess, the governor says, bowing. You curtsy the precise centimetre that says respect without submission. Your French holds. Your smile does what smiles do when they are work. You answer small questions about weather and God and the channel with phrases that travel well. You deflect larger questions, portics, ports, rumors with the holy skill of it would be premature to say you sit for the appropriate length of being admired. You stand for the appropriate length of being dismissed. You return to your room before your legs stage a revolution. Strong Lady Isabel says, when the door closes, Alice laces you into a softer gown for sleep and lays out bread and broth. Your body decides it remembers food. You eat. The bed is long enough. The pillow is not stuffed with straw. You thank every saint you can name. In the morning, you ride inland. The countryside moves from salt-bitten to gentle fields, from last harvest, orchards that look like someone's memory of plenty. You stop at castles where hospitality is half kindness, half surveillance. Each hall teaches you a new accent of French and a new flavor of scrutiny. The ladies compare your sleeves to theirs. The men compare your composure to a standard they maintain for the pleasure of maintaining it. You get better, not at being someone else, at being yourself, where everyone can see. You learn how to stand in a doorway and make the room believe it's lucky you did. You learn to listen in a way that tells people what they meant to say. You learn to say one sentence at dinner that becomes the sentence everyone quotes tomorrow. On the fourth evening, rain locks the road into a mud scripture. You shelter at a manor house whose owner is generous and whose beds are scarce. You share with Alice and Lady Isabel and discover that warmth is a politics you can win with laughter. In the dark, Lady Isabel says in perfect English, "I can understand your whispering, you know." You and Alice gasp, then snort with the kind of laughter teenage girls invent in all centuries. "Don't tell the others," she adds. "I like having one advantage. Paris happens the way cities do when you are too tired to be properly astonished. The spires lift like prayer. The walls look clean because you don't know where to look. To see the dirt, the palace shows itself in layers of stone and glass and money. Glass, windows that hold light like a captured thing, and then him, a boy on a white horse with the kind of face poets like and swordsmen underestimate. Blue and gold, the king's colors, ride his shoulders like compliments. He dismounts and bows deeper than his birth requires. "Princess," he says, "welcome to Paris." Your body does three things at once. It curtsies, it breathes, it hopes. You take his arm because the choreography says you should. You discover you want to. Were the roads kind? He asks as you pass through the gate. And you understand instantly that this is someone who knows how to make small talk do big work. "They were roads," you answer, and he smiles, quick, real. You cross into a courtyard where banners think they are wind. A musician makes his instrument. Sound like sunlight on water. The smell changes from river to perfume. The air changes from yours to theirs. "Rest," he says softly, as if he already knows your fatigue, your caution, your pride. "Tonight there will be music and ceremony, but for now we have set your chambers with books." Books, you think, with a gasp you hope doesn't show. He noticed, or Lady Isabel told him to notice. Either way, the message lands. You are not just a vessel. You are a mind, and that more than the bowed heads and the trumpets and the banners is the first thing that feels like hope. Asterisk first impressions of a hungry city Paris doesn't greet you. It tests you. The city watches from behind shutters and under hoods, through church doors and over market barrels. Everything is louder, the clatter of cartwheels, the call of fishmongers, hawking river catch, the bell conversations between parishes, even gossip itself, which seems to travel faster here than smoke. You ride past walls nicked by arrows from arguments older than your grandparents, past bridges lined with houses that look ready to step into the Seine. When they've had enough of land, the palace pretends to be gentle. Not inside it is unapologetically big butt indecisions. Glass in the windows, painted beams that turn ceilings into stories, a courtyard scented with crushed rosemary. Servants move like choreography, and every corridor knows which way you're supposed to face when someone more important than you walks by. Felipe keeps pace with your litter, not mounted now, but walking, as if to remind you he knows his way around his own house on his own feet. The gardens, he says, are best in spring. You've heard it twice. The repetition isn't idle. He is leaving you a map of safety. Your chambers could be a little country, antechamber, bedchamber, a smaller retiring room where a woman might keep her letters or her temper, and a private oratory that smells like beeswax and belief. Your English books sit by the window, as promised, a careful island of home. A French psalter with jeweled clasps waits beside them. A gift that says, "Welcome and watch yourself." Your new household gathers like a constellated sky. French ladies whose names unfurl into pedigrees. A wardrobe mistress with hands like needles. A tire woman who can build a hairstyle that won't fall even if the ceiling does. And two maids who never speak at the same time. They curtsy in a wave and rise in the same rhythm. You look for warmth, you see competence. Warmth you'll have to earn. Lady Isabel takes the helm. Tonight is the formal welcome, she says in French that goes down easy. There will be music, gifts, and 100 opportunities to misstep. We will avoid the last. She gestures to the gowns laid out. Deep blue silk for you French cut, hips defined, sleeves clean. Lighter gowns for your ladies. Jewels chosen to impress without taunting. You bathe, dress, and let your hair be braided into a crown whose pins feel like laws you can live with. Alice's eyes meet yours in the mirror. She doesn't need to speak. We survived the sea. We can survive this. The great hall smells like heat and spice and wax and ambition. The king sits straight as a staff at the high table, his gaze the color of polished iron. He regards you with the cool curiosity. A seasoned hawk gives a new falconer's glove. The queen is absent illness. You are told, but her absence feels strategic. This court has layers you haven't learned to count yet. Felipe's chair is beside yours. He acts as bridge and buffer both. Count Raymond, he murmurs when a man with too many rings approaches. Long memory, short temper. You supply the appropriate bow of the head. The count measures your French and returns it with a smile. That means I expected worse. A course arrives that tastes like 3 countries at once. Musicians above the screenplay, something nimble. Across from you, a duchess in colors brighter than sunrise watches the angle of your wrist as you lift your cup. Not predatory, evaluative. Under the table, your heel finds the floor, a quiet anchor. On your other side, Felipe translates a joke whispered too fast for your new ears. It's not a good joke, but the kindness is. When the time comes, you rise to play the harp. Sister Agnes would be proud. Your hands, remember. The hall exhales, then inhales in approval when you finish a psalm that climbs like light up a nave. Music is safer than speech. Music tells the room you can keep time, which is another way of saying you can keep order after courses. Gifts, and words embroidered in gold. The hall thins. Your pulse does not. It knows what comes next. The chamber, with the bed that has been waiting all evening like a held breath. The witnesses, the blessing, the fact of two bodies obeying a contract older than either of you. Felipe meets you at the threshold with a look that is not performance. "We can talk first," he says, very low. You nod because you aren't sure your voice has the right. Key's talking becomes a bridge you can walk without looking down. He asks about the channel. You ask about the gardens. He confesses to disliking hunts that turn into theatre. You confess a preference for libraries that do the same. He says your French is better than expected. You tell him his English because, yes, he has some is a delightfully terrible thing you will enjoy fixing. When the witnesses have what custom requires them to have, and the blessing has made a home on the lintel, he stays, not because he must, but because he understands the violence of leaving. "Rest," he says again. And this time you do asterisk the first week. Whispers, windows, and learning the room you. Learn Paris the way you learned a new prayer, by repetition and correction. Every morning brings a schedule that looks familiar. Prayers, lessons, accounts. Practice, but here each segment glints. The French court requires shine, even in maintenance. Lady Isabel expands your training. There are 3 courts, she says as she pins your veil. The king's, public, formal, rigid. The queen's, softer, more dangerous, ran by women whose weapons are favors and memory. And the city's informal, invisible, everywhere. She taps your temple. Learn the last. It tells you the first 2 before they tell you themselves. You walk the gardens with Felipe and see what he meant. Gravel paths score the grass into geometry. Hedges hide roots that make privacy possible in a place built to prevent it. He shows you a bench that catches morning sun and an angle where Notre Dame's towers align like ships. You discover you like talking with him beside growing things. His mind moves like a map of stars' quiet arcs, clean returns, precise connections. He asks what you read and listens to the answer. At court, the mothers assess, you like stock. Some smile an overdue sympathy. So young, so brave. Some ask questions pointed enough to draw blood, and your education in other matters. Thorough. Lady Isabel materializes at your elbow when needed, shifting the conversation with praise for your music, your household management, your French small stitches. You'd roll your eyes if it weren't all so accurate. Your first mistake happens. On the 3rd day, the king asks a question in fast court French, and you answer too quickly. Your verb choices are good. Your sentence implies more agreement than you intended. You see it land one. Man smirks, another leans to whisper. And like that, a reading of you begins to calcify. You do not panic. Later, in a smaller room with better air, you ask Felipe to clarify the king's preference on the matter. You write a short, precise note in your own good hand, answer corrected, stance clarified. You send it to the king with a small gift from your embroidery lilies on linen. It is received. The next day the king's gaze warms 1 degree. A courtier murmurs, she learns. A rival murmurs, she is coached. Both are true. You can live with truth. The queen finally appears, pale, layered in fabrics that say recovery and rank. She has the look of someone who has outlasted 3 different storylines and refuses a 4th. You kneel, offer proper words and a gift, a small reliquary frame for a prayer she favors. She studies you not like prey or pawn, but like phenomenon. Her fingers are cool when they brush your glove. Stand, daughter, she says, voice thread thin, iron strong. Later, someone will whisper that she had reservations about an English bride. You will send her a book in Latin, its margins clean. Reservations sometimes retire in the face of competence. At night, when the palace relaxes into the murmur that means secrets are being told somewhere else, you and Alice count what you've learned, who hates whom more than they hate you, whose debts are loud, which ladies value music over gossip, the safest ones, and which servants are trusted with trays that carry letters under bread. You make a little atlas of danger and kindness. You add notes in English, you write so fast, even Margaret can't always read them. There is comfort in maps. Once only, once you cry, alone, not from pain, not even from fear, but from the pressure of being translated all day long. Your words, your gestures, your meaning, your very face. It is exhausting to be constantly turned into information for other people to use. You let the tears happen without making a noise, dab your eyes with rose water, and walk back into the corridor wearing a face that says, "Try me, eh?" Rumor comes the next week, someone declares. You laughed during a serious moment at Mass. You didn't. Your veil shifted, and someone saw a smile where there wasn't one. You know better than to deny. Denials feed rumors like scraps. You ask the king's confessor for a reading recommendation on humility, and show up at Vespers with a candle large enough to signal contrition without signaling bribery. The rumor gasps for air and dies, unremarkable. Your ladies learn the rhythm. Don't fight smoke. Let it dissipate in a larger wind. Inside all of this, a friendship begins to root. Philippe brings you a slim book on the movement of planets. I like the way the heavens refuse to notice our wars, he says. You laugh not the dangerous kind and watch his face open like a window when he sees your interest is real. You ask him what he fears. He answers. You file it where you file. The ring under useful truths that make me kinder. The edge of the blade, court games and how not to bleed. Paris keeps knives in its smiles. You knew that entering, you didn't know how fine the steel was, until a harmless compliment became a deadline with a noble woman's name attached. It begins. At the Queen's table, Madame de Villiers, famous for turning conversation into currency, praises your French small stitches in a tone that turns praise into dare. You must show us something truly Parisian at the next salon, she says, fluttering her fan like a small heraldic bird. Everyone hears the subtext. Prove you belong, or we will prove that you don't. You have a week. You could flinch, or you could design a trap that looks like a gift. You write to Sister Agnes for a piece of music in the newest styler. Devotional that travels under the skin like an arrow disguised as a hymn. You ask the wardrobe mistress for a gown cut in the French line but embroidered in a pattern your mother taught you, a Spanish inheritance softened to French taste. You enlist Lady Marjorie's cousin resident in Paris and deep in perfumery. Distill a whisper of scent for the salon. Rose pulled thin with time and river air. You are building an experience, not off-the-peg proofs. If they want Paris, you will bring it back to them, filtered through you. The night arrives. The salon. Blooms velvet, ringing metal laughter, snuff, silk gravity. You stand, you play. You let the music run the room's blood for a minute longer than expected. Then end on a note that feels like falling, then not. The silence that follows is the kind that counts. You bow when you straighten. Madame de Villiers' fan is motionless. That is how a victory looks here. Nobody claps loudest. They simply stop moving. Not all games are staged. Some find you in hallways. A count's son corners Margaret with a compliment that curdles on the plate. Too sweet, too insistent. You arrive mid-sentence. Walk with me, you say to Margaret, then turn to the young man with a smile that performs ignorance and contains none. Tell my husband how cleverly you recite Dante. The boy retreats, confused. You and Margaret file the face and the method. The next day, you arrange for the boy to be busy hunting. Whenever your ladies are near a corridor, you learn the currencies: time, scarcity, attention, seating, who sits beside, whom can make a rumor, who stands behind, whom can end one. You learn to arrive 10 breaths after the person who thinks arriving last is power. You learn to leave before wine teaches tongues to loosen. You learn which steward likes his mistress more than his master and therefore keeps better secrets. Your first open disagreement with a great lady because there must be one comes over the matter of a charity. Her idea is spectacle. Yours is bread. She wants a public almsgiving that will put her name in tapestries. You want the granary refitted so the city eats through February. She frames your practicality as coldness. You let her. Then you walk the granary with the king's steward and ask hard questions about spoilage, rats, and ledger lines. You bring the king a small report in 2 languages. He reads it, sighs, and says, "Do both." The lady believes she won. The city does, too. You can live with that math. You also misstep, because learning requires risk. You speak too honestly with a minor lord whose ears carry more than they contain. A phrase about martial waist true, useless, finds its way to a man who built his identity on war. He glowers at you from across 3 rooms for 3 weeks. You do not correct him. You compliment his horses. You ask about bridges. He forgets why he disliked you. You file the lesson under Spend the Truth, where it buys you something. Inside these maneuvers, letters move between Paris and your old castle. Your mother writes short, sharp truths. Remember your hands. They say more than your mouth. Your father offers little beyond politics and the occasional line of reluctant pride. The king respects your judgment. Do not make me regret trusting it. And a younger brother sends a crude drawing of to mice in a straw mattress with a note they miss you. You don't cry. You tuck the drawing inside a book and let it warm you the way a hidden coal warms an entire length of iron dot. At the end of a long month, Felipe asks you what you want. Not for the court, not for the city, not even for the king. For yourself. The question startles you enough that you answer before designing the answer. A library, you say. A room with more books than chair. A place where girls sit without permission because permission was built into the door. He laughs softly. We can do that. You go to sleep that night feeling something unusual. Not safe, exactly, but supported. It is a rare thing, and you accept it the way you accept sunlight on a cold day brief. Gold. The right temperature to make you believe in spring.winter fever. When the body says stop, cold arrives not as weather but as policy. The palace tapestries thicken. The corridors learn new drafts. Even the kitchens feel smaller. You dress in layers and add fur-lined slippers that make you feel briefly decadent until a wind sneaks beneath the hem and turns you back into a citizen of this century. Then fever finds you. As it finds so many, a creeping ache, a flush that doesn't match the room, a cough that arrives like an uninvited noble and refuses to leave. The physician order bleeds the old remedy, balanced with honeyed wines and bitter decoctions that apologize to nothing. Lady Marjorie spoons broth past your lips. Alice cools your neck with river-cold water. Lady Isabel stands at the window and calculates the quality of the air like she can argue with it. Felipe comes, daily with a book, as if books can convince the body to stay. He reads when your head floats too far from the bed. He listens when you mumble nonsense about the straw mattress from home and the way Notre Dame looks like a ship. He brings a small astrolabe and shows you how to trace the path of a star. The heavens, he says, do not hurry. It is a ridiculous comfort, and therefore perfect. The fever peaks. You travel to the edge, not to the grand storybook gate with angels and trumpets, but to a thin seam where breath bargains with dark. You feel women's hands, keeping you tethered. Alice's at your wrist. Lady Isabel's on your brow. Lady Marjorie's at your feet. You hear a man's voice say your name without title. Stay. You decide to. It feels like a choice. It may not be, but the feeling is the medicine. You mend slowly. The palace runs on without you. That is the design. But small currents shift when you return. The Queen sends you a sprig of rosemary and says, "We prefer you in the room." The King says, "We postponed a hunt in inclement weather," which is the closest he comes to admitting he worried. Ladies who disliked you decide disliking you is boring and pivot to someone else. Those who liked you show it by bringing only useful gossip. Illness recalibrates you. You realize how much of your day is gesture designed for other people's hunger. You begin trimming it where you can, reclaiming minutes like coins fallen under a table. You make a rule, 2 hours of reading after Compline, unless the King requires. You break the rule once for a woman whose baby arrived too early. You do not break it for anyone who wants you to applaud them drinking. One night, when the fire burns clean and the outside cold sounds like it's trying to say your name, you and Felipe sit close enough that your shoulders negotiate the same. "Blanket, I thought of what it would be like if you died," he says, not dramatically, simply. I did not like that thought. You look at him and see not a prince who married an alliance, but a person who nearly lost a friend. You take his hand, not for politics, not for optics, but because you want it there. Across winter, you practice being a person who survived. It looks like eating when you aren't hungry because the body needs the habit. It looks like walking the length of the gallery, twice each morning, nodding at tapestries you have memorized. It looks like writing 3 letters you meant to write months ago, all beginning with, "I should have said this sooner, but my courage was busy elsewhere." When spring cuts the city free, you feel it first in the air and second in the way your ladies laugh again like their lungs learned new rooms. You decide not to waste the season. Confinement and cry. The most dangerous journey your courses fail to come once, then again. The royal physician smiles with his teeth covered and declares what everyone hopes: you are with child. The palace changes temperature by degrees. The Queen is gentle, the King is warmer. The ladies sharpen in interest. The servants become quietly protective in halls where jostling used to be a sport. Felipe looks both huge and young when he hears, like someone who just became the country. For a smaller person to live in, joy arrives at your door carrying terror in its sleeve. You have watched women disappear into childbirth, the way ships disappear into weather. You know that sons can be born and mothers can be buried in the space of an afternoon. Your body is a battleground between hope and instruction. Lady Isabel reads it all in your face and says, "We will build your defenses now." She hires the best midwives, practical women who regard men's theories about bodies with amused suspicion. Philippe summons an Italian physician rumored to wash his hands on purpose. Everyone makes room for both old wisdom and new. Pregnancy remakes your hours. You are not fragile, you are specific. You eat for two and politely hand back dishes that taste of risk. You nap in the afternoons and call it strategy. You keep your schedule but outsource any part that requires standing on stone for more than one psalm. When ladies hint you should send for a wet nurse after the birth, you nod without promising. You want to feed your child yourself for as long as the body permits. You do not announce this yet. Announcements make things brittle. Autumn rides in, glowing and deceptive. Labor begins with a wetness and a pain that means work has started. The birthing room is prepared like a ship for weather. Windows covered to keep bad air out. Floors strewn with herbs for their faith as much as their function. Relics placed where hands can reach them. Men stay out. Women carry the day. The pain comes honest. It takes your training and uses it like wood for a fire. The midwives shift you, breathe with you, command you. Lady Isabel holds your hand and forgets to be composed. Hours stack. Courage renews and breaks and renews again. When nothing moves the way it should, the Italian doctor is called past custom. He washes his hands in wine and speaks to you directly. The child is turned wrong. I can help if you let me. He does not say how much it hurts. He does not lie. You nod. He turns the baby with knowledge that seems like magic and is not. You scream so the whole palace hears. Then the world tips, and suddenly the body understands its job again. Now, says a midwife who deserves a title no man invented. You push. Time shrinks to one breath, then another. The room tightens, brightens, thunders into applause as a cry splits the chamber. A sun whole, loud, infuriated by light. You collapse into a kind of darkness that is mercy, not fear. Recovery is long because life is. The most dangerous part is not over until the doctor nods the third day. Infection prowls. Fever tests the door. Your body negotiates with blood and milk and exhaustion and identity. You lie in for a month because that's the rule and because rules sometimes make sense. You feed the child yourself despite advice to the contrary. He latches like a prince, decisive, greedy, successful. You laugh the laugh that belongs to mothers at 3 in the morning, delighted, outraged, wholly tired. The palace adores him. The king's mouth, which never forgets being king, softens when the baby frowns in his sleep. The queen less spectral now touches his cheek with a finger so light it might be a blessing. Felipe looks at him the way he looks at charts of the heavens, tenderly, with awe, and with an understanding that patterns apply here too. What do you wish for him? You ask one night when the baby decides you're a mattress and kings are unnecessary, for him to be better than me in all the ways that count, Felipe says, and less required to be loud. You name him Henry because the country requires it. You whisper another name into his hair because you require it too. You don't write it down. It belongs to the private dictionary you are building as a counterweight. To all the public tongues, when the month ends, you present yourself and the child to the court. No longer a promise, but a fact. The hall glows with satisfaction. The women who judged you hardest now judge you victorious because their rubric was cruel and you solved it anyway. You accept praise the way a fortress accepts sunlight, gladly, with walls still strong. In the private hours, after everyone has said their necessary things, You and Alice count the small miracles, milk that came, fevers that didn't, stitches that hold, a husband who waited when he could have hurried everything, ladies who remained women, when protocol would have shaved that away. You sleep that night with the baby in his cradle, close enough to hear the air he moves. When he sighs, you smile. You have never been so tired or so awake. Margins of freedom, a library, a legacy, a life power in your world is a staircase with narrow steps. You cannot widen them, but you can choose your pace and what you carry. After Henry, the court shifts how it looks at you. Less as an import, more as an institution. You hurry nowhere. You carry books. The library starts as a room with 3 shelves and a promise. Felipe signs a writ. The king shrugs in a way that means yes, but don't make it loud. The queen sends 2 volumes from her own collection. A gesture so intimate you write her a thank you note that edges on poetry. You ask for texts in Latin, French, and English. You make a space anyone can enter in daylight without asking permission if they can read or want to learn. Girls, come, not all at once. First the daughter of a steward who heard you taught Margaret a new way to keep accounts, with columns that reduce error and shame. Then a seamstress's niece who can read but doesn't have a book that isn't a psalter. Then, more daringly, a young widow with questions about saints and seed rotation. You do not turn anyone away. Mothers nod to you in corridors now with a gratitude that doesn't need words. You hire a copyist who is kind to mistakes and a tutor, who believes girls have minds because he has one and recognizes the species. You sit at a table with them when you can and feel something you did not expect to feel in this life. Owned time. This is not a revolution. It is a stack of kindling in a dry century. You and Philippe settle into a partnership that is neither fairy tale nor failure. He still attends hunts he doesn't enjoy because optics want his profile in the field. You still sit beside men you'd rather feed to wolves because politics wants your smile to bless their schemes. But you eat dinner together most nights and talk about things that could get both of you accused of thinking too much in the wrong rooms. He is not saint or savior. You are not ideal or ornament. You are 2 people making a mostly workable civilization inside a larger one that sometimes isn't. You do not pretend the world is fixed. Dangers remain. Childbirth again and again. Wars that feel inevitable because men with banners need to be seen. Sickness that remembers the path to your door. Court games don't cease. Enemies don't die when you feed them. Madame de Villiers returns from a summer in the country with a new taste for cruelty. You sidestep. A lord whose fortunes sink tries to shore them by implying Englishness equals treachery. You answer by solving a grain problem in his district and let gratitude bury his argument. You will never stop doing maintenance on your reputation in this place. That is the price of having it, but the margins widen. You select an additional Lady Jen because her laugh tells you the truth about a room. You install a stillroom annex near the library so knowledge about bodies sits next to knowledge about books. You establish a practice of sending warm bread to the city gate on the first cold night of every winter, and do it without announcing it aloud. The gate guards tell the story anyway. Soon it becomes custom. Custom becomes law when enough winters agree. Sometimes you go to the gardens with Henry asleep on your chest, and Felipe brings a text on comets, and Lady Isabel sits 2 benches away pretending not to keep watch, and Alice mends a tiny glove because tiny hands grow. You look at all of it, the city, the palace, the child. the map of stars, and admit a truth you never dared earlier. You are not only surviving, you are steering. One evening, long after candles were supposed to go out, you take off your gloves and twist the ring your mother gave you. It has warmed to your skin, the ruby softened to the color of a pomegranate seed in low light. You think of the women who wore it, who endured, who stitched their consent into tapestries until they found a way to sign their names elsewhere. You think of your mother's voice saying, "Remember who you are," and you realize the sentence has expanded. It holds England and France, child and self, duty and desire, fear and the wild. Impolite hope that your granddaughter's granddaughter will not need a ring to remember at Vespers the next day. The priest reads a line you've heard 1,000 times, and for the first time it sounds like instruction to you, not at you. You leave the chapel and go directly to the library, where a girl is sounding out words with her finger, slow as spring soil warming. You sit beside her. You do not correct her. You wait. She reaches the end of the line and looks up at you as if she just opened a door nobody told her she could try. You nod. Again, you say. That night, the palace breathes its layered breath, perfume and iron and bread and ink. Somewhere a rumor begins. Somewhere a plan hatches. Somewhere a child cries, answered. You lay down in a bed that is not a trap and not a throne, just a bed. You aren't happy, exactly, because happiness here is a flicker, not a state. You are something better, necessary, chosen by yourself. A center of gravity for a small universe of women and words and a boy who will inherit more than a crown. Sleep arrives like a treaty you negotiated fairly. When it takes you, you dream not of escape, not even of victory, but of a room with more books than chairs and a door that never sticks. In the morning, bells will cut the day into pieces you recognize. You will pick up your needle and your pen and your son and arrange those pieces into meaning again. And when someone tells a story about medieval princesses, about pointy hats and towers and waiting, you will already have written a better one in the margins of the truth.